I thank you for telling us. I don't know if that's gonna be too loud, but, anyway, anyone want the door closed or left open?
I'm
or-
happy to leave it open.
Okay.
Yeah, if you guys think that's good, just because I know COVID's been going around like crazy and I don't wanna get sick and. None of us wanna get sick. And it's nice to have the fresh air while we can.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see too many big bugs coming in, so, okay, so I think we're recording, and, take it away, Marisha.
Okay, well,
Marisha Auerbach.
we're gonna talk about putting up the harvest, and, so I wanna hear from everybody what you have to put up, so that we know what to talk about, or what you put up on a, if you have an annual thing you usually make, or what your experience is with food preservation, including Barbara.
Barbara, do you care to start us off?
I've frozen marionberries. I've frozen peaches already this year. I've eaten a lot of raspberries. No freezing. Still, my apples and pears still aren't ready to, they're still not ripe yet. So that's kind of where I'm at.
No, you should come to my house. If you want any apples or pears.
Hey, Randy?
Not a lot of extra fruit this year. The main thing I had were strawberries, and so ended up freaks have about 3 25-foot beds of strawberries. And so I ate a lot of them. And then when, realizing, I'm not gonna be able to eat all these, I just started picking them and, pulling them and throwing them in freezer bags and freezing them. I was intending to make freezer jam. But didn't quite make it into the jam, so I figured I'd at least freeze them. And then I was thinking about trying to make freezer jam from them afterwards. I didn't know if that would make it like a strange texture or something, but I mean, it's freezer jam, it's mush anyway.
I mean, that's one of the benefits to freezing berries, is if you don't wanna can it later, can it then, you can can it later and do something with them later.
Yeah, I made marionberry jam out of frozen berries, and it worked fine.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
So that's about it fruit wise. The rest is like veggie stuff, what everyone has, zucchini and squash and cucumber, and the canning or the sauce tomatoes are just starting to, they're just ripe. Everything seems a little later this year.
My tomatoes are just starting. I had enough to do tabbouleh, but I have more, double what I needed to make tabbouleh.
Yeah, that's it. That's next year should, because we got a lot of 2 and 3 year old fruit trees that I've been thinning and taking off all the blossoms. And so next year, hopefully I'll actually have, some pears and apples and, blueberry bushes. I'll start letting them produce some blueberries and that sort of thing. But strawberries is the main thing this year.
Such diligence. It's hard to take off the apples and pears when they're
Yeah.
just beginning.
Oh,
Yeah.
I, as mentioned, I think before, I have 2 pear trees that came with the house, and we cut them off like, that high. And then they grew back, and I was just shocked. So, this is like the 3rd year, and there are 3 pears. Yeah, they're all on one tree. So that's been fun to see, but, we're mostly grazers. We go out and eat what's there, like the blueberries, the strawberries. So we don't do a lot of preserving of those, but we have grapes that are now coming on, interlaken right now. And, we've, learned how to use the food dehydrator, and we make some dynamite raisins from the interlakens and, the Thompsons. And then I have tended to sell my Concords, so people can do other things with them. And I also have Niagaras that I'm not doing anything with. And this is my first year that my Vanessa red seedless grape is producing, but they're like 3, 4, 5 maybe clumps
That's exciting though.
Oh, it is. I mean,
Yeah.
I've nursed that one, a while. Let's see, what else? Oh, that's good for now. Oh, that's all right. I make, applesauce with yellow transparent apples.
Mm.
Oh my God, it's good.
Yeah.
That's all. That's about it.
Well, so then do you freeze your applesauce or do you can it?
Oh, yeah, no, I.
Yeah, so no one does any canning.
I've done some, I
Mhm.
plan to do more,
Mhm.
but it's the kind of the freezing is like the safe, easy way.
It could be.
And
Until the
so-
power goes out or you have a Samsung refrigerator.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, definitely plan on doing canning.
Yeah.
With the, mainly jams and jellies, especially with all the blueberries, and hopefully we'll be overwhelmed with in the next couple of years.
Yay.
So yeah, so definitely want to do with that, and then we have a ton of rhubarb on our property too.
Yeah,
So
no.
I'm not sure what to do with that. We talked about it with Dana, when he makes his cider, we might get some of our rhubarb.
Gonna do it in the
and see if-
secondary ferment.
Yeah, or something like that, yeah, incorporate it in the process.
Yeah, that's
somehow.
probably where he do it.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, yeah, while we're on that note, I'm looking for a cider press, you know, anyone who's got a cider press. I need one to borrow or have ideally,
Mm.
and with an electric crusher.
Mm.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool, well, I have been growing all my own food year round, or most of my own food year round for the past 20 years. And I lived for 12 years in Portland without a refrigerator. So, I'm pretty well versed in how to put up the harvest, and I'm kind of a scavenger and like to just find things and be like, what can I do with it? So, you know, if we start with rhubarb, which is kind of an oddball one, my sister loves rhubarb, it's her favorite, and she lives in New York City. So I'm always thinking about like, what can I make with rhubarb that I can mail to my sister? So, I've made rhubarb bitters before for her. I mean, I mail her rhubarb cookies, rhubarb lemon cookies is usually what I send her for Mother's Day. But that's not preserving it necessarily, that's just fresh and baked. And I haven't sent her this, but I made a rhubarb cordial, which was really good with like, Saint, Grand Marnier, with Grand Marnier and a little bit of brandy. And so that's a really nice aperitif. And then you can, dehydrate rhubarb, and so I've sent her some dried rhubarb, or you just freeze it for the winter. So, I mean, there's like an obscure one where there's like all these different things that you can do with it. Some of my favorite, I brought a bunch of stuff. Can I move over here? Will the camera will follow
It
me?
follows you,
Cool.
as long as you're talking.
Okay, as long as I'm talking. So I brought a bunch of stuff that we could share or we could talk about, and some of them are already open and some of them, I'd rather not open, the canned things just for like a little bit. But we could if there's something that everyone's really excited about. So,
I think I might put this out on the porch if that's all right.
sure,
I'm seeing a lot of,
fruit flies.
fruit flies,
Yeah, well, hopefully you guys will take them home. I have a lot of pears and apples right now, so many. Those were all from yesterday. Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah, my fridge is full of them. So on pears, one of my favorite things to make is this like canned ginger pears. They're in half, they're half pears. I personally, these are Bartlett variety. I don't personally like Bartlett that much because when I want to can pears, it's not right now. It's not when it's like 90 degrees. So like at this time of year, I'm looking to do things that are much more, much less labor intensive. So, you know, freezing things, I do freezing berries, I cut up my apples in slices and froze, I got about 4 bags of those in the freezer, I coated them in sugar and, with cinnamon and nutmeg and cardamom so that I could take that out of the freezer and make apple pies and apple crisp, in the winter time, which is really great if I have a potluck or something to go to, I can just like pull it out and real quick have something, which I find really convenient and everyone loves it. And so you said you, just put the strawberries in a bag to freeze them. And so technically what you should do, if you wanna preserve your berries in their shape, you wanna put them on, baking trays.
Mhm.
So that you freeze them individually, and then once they're frozen, you put them in the bags, and then it's easier to take them out. But if you're gonna do something like freezer jam, you just gotta mush the strawberries and that's fine.
Mhm.
Yeah, on the strawberry note, I brought the shrub. So a shrub is an old time way of preserving fruit. And, basically what you do is you macerate you cut up the fruit in small pieces. And then, you soak it in an equal part of sugar, for about 3 days. And I do it on the counter, although my friend who's from Japan, who has this part of her tradition, she does it overnight and she does it in the fridge. And so I do it for 3 days and I stir it every day. And then the third day I'll strain it and then I'll add an equal part of apple cider vinegar. You can use any type of vinegar. You can use champagne vinegar, balsamic vinegar. I make a ton of apple cider vinegar. Did I bring any vinegar? I didn't. I meant to grab that on my way out. But we'll talk about strawberry vinegar next. And so a shrub is a really nice way of, preserving fruit without needing refrigeration because of the sugar and the acidity of the vinegar. And it's really good for, if you're feeling dehydrated in the summer, or if it's really hot and you don't wanna be dehydrated, it's really refreshing.
Mhm.
It's also really nice in cocktails. So this is open, and if anyone wants to try it, what I would do is just put a splash in some water, a very little bit, but you can open it and smell it if you want.
Mhm.
And then
Is it
what,
strawberry?
that one's strawberry rose. So when I cut up the strawberries and coated them in sugar, I also put some rose petals in there, because I usually like to add in herbs with the stuff I make. And that one's from last year, I think. What's the year on the?
22.
Yeah,
622.
22. So it's 2 years old and it's fine.
And you don't refrigerate it.
I don't refrigerate it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
And you say it's equal parts, is that by weight or by volume or?
by volume. So if I do 1 cup strawberries, 1 cup sugar, and then 1 cup apple cider vinegar.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, I've had some cocktails with with shrub of some, it wasn't strawberry, but.
Yeah, you can do it with anything, and they call them drinking vinegars sometimes. I might have done like cantaloupe mint or cucumber basil, you can do it with cucumbers too. And so it's just really refreshing and pretty nice.
Is there any alcohol in there?
No,
Oh, interesting, because it smells, well, it's the
it's the
fermentation.
vinegar.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh,
But
interesting.
yeah, it did, when I first smelled the too, I'm like, oh, does that have alcohol? No, vinegar, yeah.
Let's see. I haven't smelled it in a while. I was like, which one do I bring? Yeah, it's just the vinegar.
Neat.
But you can really smell the strawberries in it and the rose as well, yeah. But when you're doing strawberries, often you'll wanna cut off the tops, right?
Mhm.
And so you can cut off the tops and then put them in a jar and add a little bit of sugar and stir it and some water and stir it every day for, I think 5 days or so is what it takes, and when I have strawberries, I'm picking them every day or every 3 days. And so I'm always adding the tops into this mixture and stirring it, and usually I do this in a half gallon mason like this and stir it with a wooden spoon. And you can develop your own culture for making strawberry vinegar. And so my salads recently have been strawberry vinegar with olive oil as my salad dressing. And so that's really nice because we really just think about like apple cider vinegar, but you can make fruit vinegars out of just about anything. And you don't necessarily need a mother, but if you have one, that's helpful. And a mother is the SCOBY, symbiotic community of bacteria and yeast. And you see it, like if you get Bragg's apple cider vinegar, you'll see it in the bottom and it's kind of cloudy. Kind of looks like a pancake if you have a really nice, vibrant mother. And if anyone ever needs a mother, I have lots of mothers. They just end up occurring in many things.
So a mother, does it need to be specific to what you're making? Like,
No,
people make like apple cider, vinegar.
you could use an apple cider vinegar mother to culture a strawberry vinegar.
Okay.
And it might have a little bit more apple flavor than if you just did strawberries. But it's kind of like a Kickstarter, and so if you did just like strawberries and sugar and water in a jar and you left it open and you stirred it, then it would naturally, become vinegar. And over time, you'd have a mother that was just strawberry vinegar if you were doing it from scratch.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah. And so another thing that you can do with vinegars, this one is elderberry aronia oxymel. And so this is, I took elderberries and aronia berries and I put them in a pot with an equal part of apple cider vinegar and brought it to a boil and then turned it off as soon as it boiled. And I did that every day for 3 days and I let it sit in the stove during the day. And then after the third day, I strained it and I added an equal part of honey. And so this is really medicinal and, you know, it's elderberries, aronia berries, so it's super good for your immune system and it's really tasty too. I haven't opened it in a while. I may not be able to open it. You wanna give it a shot?
Sure.
I have carpal tunnel, so sometimes that doesn't work.
Oh.
Got a little bit of a hiss,
Yeah, a
so
little
that's not bad, you know, that's always a good sign. You know, you don't wanna see. Yeah, so you can smell that, and you're welcome to try anything that's already open if you want to. I also have a hawthorn oxymel that I made.
Oxymel?
Oxymel, so it's a combination of apple cider vinegar and honey, is what an oxymel is, with fruit or herbs. And it's like an old time way of preserving and making medicine. I learned about it from my good friend Eagle Song Evans Gardner, who's a herbalist in Monroe. And she is a lover of the hawthorn. She was actually just visiting me for the first time at my new place this weekend and brought me my first hawthorn tree for the property. And, but the hawthorn, if you boil hawthorn like that every day, it can get quite gelatinous, you know, because it has so much pectin in it. So that's why I chose to bring this one. Well, also because, you know, you're wearing a mask and, you know, we're all concerned about getting sick at this time of year. And so it's great to have all these different ways that we can preserve elderberry or aronia so that we can have our food be our medicine, but also be putting up the bounty from the orchard. And in the case of either one of those, if you have them, you often have a lot. So like with elderberries, I dry my elderberries and make elderberry syrup. I do an elderberry lacto fermented soda. I make this, you know, so sometimes I add them in different things. So those are just like the regular things that I want to have of elderberry every year.
What kind of elderberries do you have?
Right now, I have, I just got my place in January, and so the ones that I planted, I thought they were Cerulea, but, when I look at the berries now, they look like the black elderberries, so I'm not sure, I got them from Skeeter. And they were too big to go in pots, I bought them for my nursery initially, so they went in the ground, I got 5 of them, and my chickens killed one. Yeah. But I like to use the Niagara and I like to use Cerulea, because I think that Cerulea, which is our native blue, Sambucus Cerulea, I think that one actually has the most medicinal content. And when I worked at Bastyr, the people I worked with said they thought so too, but there just hasn't been all the studies done on the Cerulea as there has been on the European, Niagara.
Oh, really?
So, but we have that nice bloom on the outside of the Cerulea, and I have made mead with it. Where I didn't use any other yeast, I just left it, you know, with its natural yeast on the berries, and that came out quite nice.
This is showing my lack of knowledge, mead, I thought that was honey.
It's honey wine,
Oh,
but,
okay.
so instead of like, so you make it with honey and then you do on the secondary ferment, you add the berries. And so I've done elderberry mead, and then I've also done a rose petal mead and a lemon balm mead.
Oh,
Yeah, one of my good friends is a mead maker in the Gorge. His business is called Melcomie, and you can sometimes find his stuff around town. I think they have it at the co-op, and he's got a very beautiful bottle design that's his goal is to be a bioregional meadery that's providing like the fruits of our region and the herbs of our region.
neat.
Yeah,
And so you said for the, it starts with an O again?
oxymel.
Oxymel. Meal?
So mel is the honey.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oxymel.
Oh, okay.
And so you boil it, let it, over a series of days, boil it, let it cool off, boil it, let it cool off, and repeat that. And then, so in its current form, then in the jar, like, how long can that sit on your shelf?
I think it's also indefinite because of
Okay.
because of the alcohol, because of the acidity and the sugar.
Okay.
Yeah, and this one says it's from December of 2020.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a lot of things right now
Wow.
that need to get used up.
Mhm.
Yeah, cause I didn't have a farm for the last 2 years, and so since I grow all my own food year round, I didn't wanna run out of stuff, so. I ended up with a lot more. I also have a little bit of a hoarding mentality. My family were refugees, so I just have a lot of food around. Yeah. I'm gonna just grab my sweater. I personally really like the things where you have this episodic thing you need to do, okay, I put in apple cider vinegar, I brought it to a boil, I turned it off, and you have this space in between. So the maraschino cherries were kind of like that, and this is also open, there's the juice. And then there's the cherries themselves. These have been refrigerated. I just took them out of the refrigerator. So if you wanna grab a spoon and try a maraschino cherry, you're welcome to. There's two different ways there's multiple ways to make them. And the way I did it this year, they're with Montmorency cherries from my good friend Kirk Hansen's tree. And it was really hot when I harvested them, so I didn't wanna do too much but with cherries, having maraschino cherries, I just really like that. It feels, I don't know, it's something I really feel fancy or something if I have it in my pantry. But I don't want it to be alcoholic because I want kids to be able to try it or, people who don't drink alcohol. And so some recipes for maraschino cherries are you just infuse it in alcohol. But this recipe was I soaked it in salt overnight. And then I drained it and washed it. And then I had that sequence, I put in sugar and I brought it to a boil. And then I turned it off and it was a 3-day sequence, and then you add some spices and then can it, and it's in the juices. And so, sugar and fruit will sweat out juices, and so that's where the liquid, from the shrub comes from, and there was some water added to the maraschino cherries.
So what does the salt do? Is it just to pull out the more moisture from the?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it makes it so they can stay firm,
Mhm.
right? And you can try them. When Kirk tried them, he said, "Oh, that tastes just like a maraschino cherry."
Well, and I thought maraschino cherries were a particular variety.
They are, but we often don't find, I think it might be a location too, a variety based on location. But we're not that location and we often don't have that variety, and Montmorency is a good choice for us. Yeah, I think this recipe, when I found it, and it took me a while to find the one that I had. It was like when I worked with Portland Fruit Tree Project, someone had sent me this recipe. And I thought it actually wasn't the one that I had used a different one at some point. And I don't know if I'd ever used this one before. But it's kind of hard to find some of the older recipes because, usually it's just about like, people are scared to do some of the older recipes. They're scared to have stuff sitting like this. And so, I tracked it down from someone with Portland Fruit Tree Project who had passed it along.
Neat.
Yeah, I do have a nice article on botulism that I could share. Tomorrow night, I'm teaching my
Yes.
September workshop on putting up the harvest is tomorrow night with the Grow Your Own Produce workshop series. And so I like to include a good article on botulism, so it's really clear that you're not gonna kill yourself or your family members, and you can actually give them these things like, well, this one here, this is the last jar of brandied Asian pears from 2015. These are really good. They're especially good on pizza with walnuts and goat cheese. Yeah, so that one we can open if y'all want to. That's Asian pears, which I'll usually do. So dried fruit, I brought dried plums and mulberries. So these are Italian prune plums. These are mulberries. And you wanna dry your fruit at 135 degrees. That's usually what, one of the circular dehydrators is set at. But I like to use an Excalibur dehydrator because you can set your temperature control. You're welcome to try those. Yeah, try it, please,
Yeah.
please, eat them.
Yeah.
Anything that's open, I brought because I want you guys to eat it. The mulberries are from a friend of Sandia's on the east side from his tree.
Oh, sorry. I know.
And the plums are Italian prune, which are one of my favorite things to preserve because they're so easy to just go through really quickly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, classic prune. You might find my aunt was just visiting on Monday and she had like a bag of prunes that she got from Costco or something and she eats them every day. And I was like, oh, you should take my prunes. But for her, they were too hard. And I think I mean, they put sulfates and stuff in the fruit that you get at the store. And I think that helps it maintain its freshness and be softer.
Yeah.
But in my experience, it's really devastating if you put all the time into preserving something and it goes bad. And so I wanna make sure that when I'm drying something that it's really dry.
Yeah.
And kind of like the taste of the sulfates, like you can taste it,
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
especially on like apricots and
Uh-huh.
things, so.
And it lasts like, yeah.
Yeah. And with dried stuff, you can rehydrate them by putting them in hot water. So sometimes I've dried, like my cherry tomatoes, when I have too much, I'll cut them in half and I'll dehydrate them. And then have them for soup in the winter. Or if I was making a breakfast sandwich and I didn't have any tomato butter, because that's what I like on my breakfast sandwiches in the winter. Then I'd rehydrate some cherry tomatoes and I might use that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm interested in seeing the information on on botulism.
Okay.
That is a concern of mine, but yes, running out of electricity is also a concern, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, there's so many different ways to preserve food and homesteader used to have, you know, a diverse array, like, you know, you wanna try all sorts of different things. You know, dried fruit can be stored in a small space. I do prefer to see it in jars, but you know, if we had an earthquake, my ex-partner used to always say, if we have an earthquake, we're gonna have jars everywhere. You know, I have lots of jars. That's, but I like putting things in jars and I mean, right now I've been freezing lots of pesto. And that's actually in jars, cause I don't have the small plastic containers that I usually like to use.
Mhm.
What else is fun over here? I've got this, I think at a previous meeting, myself or Coco brought some membrillo, right, like the quince paste. This you'll need a little knife for. This is damson plum cheese.
Oh, wow.
So the damson, you know, is an old fashioned variety of plum and it has a lot of pectin in it. And so this is kind of like quince membrillo, but with damsons. And so this is open, it's preserved, it's shelf stable, and it's delicious. It's just concentrated damson plums.
Did you say the last word? Did you say cheese?
It's called cheese, you know, because you want it to get to a consistency of cheese and you want to be able to slice it. So I'm a big fan of cheese plates.
Okay.
And so that's what you do with that. And if you want to try one, that one's available. I meant to stop at the co-op first and get some crackers, but maybe since there's so few of us, I can hit the co-op before they close, so I really needed to go.
There's enough utensils that I'll waste,
Yeah,
waste a spoon here.
I mean, and I have some clean ones that aren't trash too, and I have a little pouch of utensils.
The mulberries are good,
Yeah,
and I love mulberries.
I love mulberries, and they're so prolific, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, like a mulberry syrup for pancakes would be delicious, and so, I mean, that's another thing too, is like, so. In my dreams, my future farm is gonna have like, at the farm stand, we'll have like all sorts of derivatives from apple cider. And so you can make you press your cider, and then you can make hard cider from that, or you can make apple jack. But then you could also ferment it to make apple cider vinegar, and if anyone ever needs apple cider vinegar, I have it for sale. I make tons of apple cider vinegar. I also have quince rose vinegar, some quince Asian pear vinegar, strawberry vinegar, like I mentioned, I have some grape vinegar or wine vinegar, that would be called. And sometimes things just turn to vinegar. And then you inadvertently have vinegar. Like I made a blue elderberry something that turned to vinegar because of all that bloom on it. Yeah, but you can also cook down fruit until it's like the consistency of syrup. And then it concentrates the sugar so it's shelf stable. So I have like a plum syrup, I have an apple syrup, plum, pear syrup. So that's, you just take the cider and you cook it down further. And there used to be a roll in communities in Europe that was called the stroop maker. And they called it stroop, you know, which might be the stroop waffle, where that comes from, but it doesn't say anything about fruit in the packaging. But the term stroop is for apple cider or pear cider that's been cooked down to the consistency of molasses. And so, here where we don't grow sugar cane and, we can, I mean, Patrick's been doing great stuff with WSU with tapping, the big leaf maples. Patrick Schultz, who lives here in Olympia and works with
We have a lot of
WSU.
big leaf maples. and
We do, and those are, I mean, he would be a really great speaker to have come out and he'd probably enjoy doing that. So because I'm friends with Patrick now, I've seen him twice and now I have, the second time he brought me another jar of big leaf maple syrup, so I'm not hoarding it as much as I was before. But that's pretty special stuff to have big leaf maple syrup.
And his name is
Patrick Schultz.
Schultz, okay.
And he could talk about big leaf maple syrup and he could also talk about shiitake mushrooms. As well as agroforestry. He's part of our local the agroforestry regional group, Agroforestry Northwest.
Okay.
Mhm.
Cool.
So let's see, what haven't we talked about yet?
Have you ever used a freeze dryer?
I've never used a freeze dryer. They're very expensive.
Yeah.
Any opinions about it?
It's very expensive, is pretty much my
Yeah.
opinion. I'm really
Yeah.
grassroots and I haven't yet had a thing that made me feel like I need to get a freeze dryer. I know one of the farms that I almost put an offer in, the woman there, she made freeze dried candy. And there's like a whole culture of people that do that. But yeah, I'm pretty grassroots as far as like what I do. And I do a lot more with solar dehydration if I had an electric assist for the evening. But one of the big challenges we have is that once we get into, nights like this, where it's gonna be hot tomorrow, but we're still gonna have that humidity coming in the evening. And so it doesn't work as well as a continental climate. Our maritime climate doesn't work very well for solar dehydrating because it takes a long time. I mean, your grapes, right? They take like 2 days to dehydrate at 135 degrees, sometimes 3.
Yeah.
And an important thing to know, if anyone doesn't know about dehydrating grapes or blueberries or tomatoes, is that you wanna make sure that you have a hole, poked in them for the air to escape. Otherwise, you'll get, the texture won't be right. And so for grapes, it's nice to pinch them on the sides so that they come off the stem where where they're attached to the stem opens a bit, it kind of puckers. And that's the best way to take your grapes off the vine for drying. Yeah, but for some things like elderberries or sea buckthorn or other sorts of fruit, if you have a branch and you're gonna prune it off and you want an easy way to get all the berries off the branch, which is sometimes one of the most time consuming things for food preservation, you just stick the branch in the freezer. And then when you take it out, all the berries fall off the branch. And so that can be a quick trick. Yeah, some other things I have here that we haven't passed around yet. Fruit butters, I don't like using sugar. I don't make a lot of jams. I make this is my favorite type I'm a big fan of marmalade. I'm a big fan of quince. And, we think about citrus as being marmalade, but marmalade is from the word membrillo or marmelo, membrillo, which is quince, Spanish for quince. And quince has a lot of pectin in it and it's the original marmalade. And so you would shred your quince, like in a food processor, and then having a lot of surface area on your quince is what brings the pectin out. And so I make this one every year. It says RGC marmalade, which is rose ginger cardamom marmalade, which is my most favorite one to make. It just feels like a really fancy gift to give people.
So there's rose, ginger, and cardamom and
Quince.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, neat.
And sugar.
There is some sugar.
Yeah, there is some sugar. So marmalade always needs sugar. But it's got, you can see the consistency is really nice.
Yeah.
And you're welcome to open this
Yeah.
if you want to. But that's the only jam I usually make. I don't eat a lot of jam. I don't eat a lot of sugar. And so I try to not do things with a lot of sugar, although quince always seems to take a lot of sugar when you do stuff with quince. But here's a quince pear sauce. So that's just cooked down quinces and pears, and it looks like I added some raisins in this one, which is really nice warmed in the winter time. But Usually with fruit, what I like to do in jelly jars is I do fruit butters. And so these can be canned. This one's apple butter. This is probably made with King, King of Tompkins County, which is my most favorite apple. And Tompkins King is a really sweet, fragrant apple, and that's how I like things to have a nice fragrance. If I'm gonna go order a beer, I'm gonna say, what's your most fragrant beer? Usually what's your most fragrant IPA? And so I really like that in my varieties of fruit. And so this apple butter or pear butter, or I've done quince butter, it's usually 1 part juice to 2 parts fruit. And so usually I try to do my apple butter around the same time that I press cider, so I can put aside the juice from the cider pressing and then mix it with the fruit. And I just love the alchemy that happens when you cook things down and they become something else. And so with the fruit butters, you want to get them to that spreadable consistency. And so that's got a really smooth, spreadable consistency, and then that can be canned.
Is Tompkins King, you said,
It's called Tompkins King. The full name, as Joni would always correct me, is King of Tompkins County. Right, because it came from the research station in New York. Tompkins County is in New York.
Had Star King on my list of apples I was looking for.
Uh-huh,
I didn't have a.
King of Tompkins County. Yeah, and it's an October apple.
Oh.
September, October, so we'll see that with like all my apples and pears. I want it to be cooler out, so I want it to be able to be canned at that time. Right now, I might like dry apples is my next thing I'm gonna probably do. And we've got this one's kind of cool. This is an old Italian recipe that was hard to find. And I still don't know if I'm doing it right. I need some Italian friends to help me. I couldn't find this on the internet. It's quince mostarda, and so it's quinces mixed with mustard. And so it's really nice on like a turkey sandwich. Super good. And this one's open. It came out of the fridge, and so you're welcome to
Kind of
try
a
that.
chutney of sorts.
Yeah, it's like, yeah.
Interesting. Huh.
Another quince thing I brought here is Persian quince jam. And so this is a Persian recipe where it's not really jam, it's like candied quince slices. And so it's another really nice thing for a cheese plate. This one's not open.
I forgot to ask on the one you said was what was it, pear?
Pear quince.
Pear quince,
Sauce.
sauce, and just cooked it down?
I just cook it down.
You didn't add anything to it, and so that is actually canned?
That's canned.
Okay, so that is, it's shelf stable closed.
Shelf stable closed, right?
Yeah.
So you'll see that everything that I have that's canned doesn't have a ring on it. The things that have rings on it are the things that are not canned. Well, this one has a ring on it,
Mhm.
but it's because, and so this was from so long ago that hadn't learned yet that you don't want to have rings on your canned food because that's somewhere where bacteria can grow. And so what you want to do, so for process for canning is you want to you have your thing that you want to can, and it's usually up to temp. There's a few exceptions like pickles, and we'll talk about that next. And so what I always do is I put the jars in the oven, like I wash my jars and then I put them in the oven at 275 to keep them warm. Some people boil their jars in the boiling water bath canner. I find that really clumsy because it's easy to break, or like then you're taking boiling jars out of the canner and then you put it somewhere, and where you're gonna put it, and then sometimes it cools down, and if it cools down and they're not the right temp and they go back in the canner, then you break jars. I was canning peaches for someone once and I broke some jars of her canned peaches and I felt so bad. And so once I learned that I could put the jars in the oven, and just hold them in the oven, that really has helped troubleshoot some stuff. So I have my jars in the oven. I have a small pot on the stove with warm water, which is keeping the lids supple. And so you always want to use brand new lids when canning. And I can include an article on canning, or I have handouts on all this stuff. And so then you have your warm thing and you put it in the warm jar, and then you put a warm lid on it. And then you put your ring on and you tighten it, like you tighten it and then let it out a little bit. So you don't want it super tight.
I thought you said you don't put a ring.
No, I'm talking about from the beginning, when you can, right? You need the ring on your jar, because when you lower it into the boiling water bath canner, the ring is what keeps your lid on. when you take it out of the boiling water bath canner and you wanna do 20 minutes for most pints and 40 minutes for quarts. Then you take them out and you put them on a towel on your counter and they need to sit for 24 hours. And you wanna put them so they don't touch. But I usually put them on a towel and let them sit for 24 hours. And after that 24-hour period, I'll take off the ring and I'll check to make sure it's sealed. And I'll wipe everything off the side if anything came off the side. And so that's the most sanitary way to store them is with the rings off.
Oh, interesting.
Mhm.
Oh,
It's like, if you need the ring on, then it's not sealed. Is that kind of part of?
Well, yeah, cause you
Yeah.
shouldn't be able to pull it, like these, you won't be able to pull the lid off.
Mhm.
And so you wanna double check that, and if you can pull the lid off, then you'll wanna send it through the boiling water bath canner again. Uh-huh, yeah. And you always need to leave a little bit of airspace, so usually that's about, where the jar narrows. These, it's where the ring is. So that's important. If you don't have enough airspace, you'll break a jar when it expands in the pressure in the canner. And for something like dilly beans or pickles, which is if you're gonna can pickles
what was
or
the first thing?
dilly beans,
Dilly beans?
which is green beans and vinegar.
Oh, okay.
Mhm. Yeah, I loved dilly beans. I'm allergic to green beans, so I don't do that anymore, but they're really great. Dilly beans is a great way to put up your green beans. And I can grow scarlet runners, so maybe I should try to do that, but they're too long for a jar, But something like that, you want them to be crisp, right? You want crisp pickles. I mostly make lacto fermented pickles right now. I meant to bring those. I need people to eat my pickles right now. And to do those and make them stay firm, we usually add something that has tannins in it. So we do a horseradish leaf or an oak leaf, or you can also do a grape leaf. And you can put those in also if you're canning pickles. But with canning pickles, that would be like a cold pack method is what it's called. Most things are hot packed, these pears were in the liquid and I spoon them into the warm jar. But if you wanna do pickles, then you don't want to have your vegetables get overly cooked. And so what you do is you wanna time it right, so you have your warm jars, you have your canner heating up right before the canner's ready to go, and you have your liquid that's gonna go over your pickles. And you have that on the stove, and so then you can put the pickles in the warm jar and pour the warm liquid over it, and then put it in the canner, and that's how, then it only cooks for the 20 minutes of canning the jar. And so then that's how you make canned pickles and have them be good.
Would you ferment the pickles like the cucumbers before that? And then, or is it, they're not gonna ferment in the jar, right?
No, they're not, and they're not gonna ferment if they're canned, you're gonna destroy all that good bacteria, right? And so to me, they're two separate things.
Okay.
And so I make lacto fermented dills is my preferred way to do it. But if I have a ton of cucumbers, then I'm gonna be canning it.
Okay.
And those would be in vinegar, and lacto fermented dills are in, it's 4 cups water to 2 tablespoons of salt is the proportion of the brine. And there's all sorts of things that you can lacto ferment. I mean, I do pickles, and so that means I'll just like get the cucumbers, I'll soak them in a jar of and I'll soak them in a bowl of cold water, ice water, and that helps keep them firm. And I'll cut off the blossom end, and then I'll put them in the jar. I'll add in some garlic, some dill, and a horseradish leaf right now, because I don't have grape leaves ready yet. And then I'll cover them with that 4 cups of water to 2 tablespoons of salt. And with lacto fermented things, you wanna have a weight on them because it's an anaerobic process. And so that if you had it exposed to air, that's where bacteria would grow. But if you have it submerged, then you wouldn't. And that's actually, I have pictures of airlocks, and I have slides that are prepared if you want them, on these things, just for talking points, so.
And when you say lacto fermented,
Mhm.
meaning that it's been left open to air and therefore you've gotten the lactobacillus in there?
The lactobacillus is natural on the outsides of our vegetables, and sometimes we can use a starter to get it going. But it's not from the air, because the air is what you don't want, because it's an anaerobic process. So with my pickles, I'll put them in, I usually use an airlock I'll put a weight on top of them to submerge them under the liquid, and then I'll put an airlock on, so air doesn't come in, but air can come out. And that's what we do with cider too, right? Like your initial fermentation, the first 10 days, you just have it in a bucket maybe, and you have like a lid loosely on the bucket so that air can get out, so you don't get some crazy blowout, you know, because otherwise it can go all over the place. And then you move it into carboy with an airlock on it. And you're always trying to take it off the yeast when you make cider, because you don't want, the yeast is where you get some off flavors. And so you're trying to like make it eat all the sugars, digest the yeast, leave the yeast on the bottom, and then you rack it to the next, you know, thing, whether that's another carboy or whether that's going into the bottles.
And by rack it, you mean pour it off? into
Well, you
something
use
else?
a siphon so that you don't get the yeast that's on the bottom, you just get the liquid off the top.
Mhm.
Which is actually quite handy, because the one time I made, when I made rose petal mead and lemon balm mead, I had two situations where one, I had a jar of honey, a full gallon jar of honey that broke and fell on the, you know, in my kitchen, and I had to scrape it off the floor. And then I also had, a bunch of honey from my beehive that we got, but there were all these bugs in it. And so by fermenting it in to make mead, all of that sediment, broken glass or insects went to the bottom. And then when we racked it, it came off that, and we were able to preserve that honey, which is expensive
Wow.
and treasured.
Yeah. Well, interesting.
What about zucchini?
Zucchini I usually dry,
Okay.
so that I can put it in soups in the winter. Or I'll chop it up, or I'll like chop it in rounds and put a little bit of salt on it so I can use it like chips.
Mhm.
So you can dip it in stuff. Or I'll shred it
And dehydrate it.
and dehydrate it,
Oh, okay,
and so that would be at 135 degrees, just like for the fruit. If I'm gonna dehydrate leaves or seeds or flowers, it's at 85 degrees.
Mm.
And the other thing I do is I shred it, you know, for zucchini bread,
Mhm.
or latkes. I make a lot of latkes when Hanukkah comes around, so.
Ah.
Mhm.
You mix it in with potato, or you make as a potato substitute?
I'll mix it in with potatoes sometimes.
Uh-huh.
I like to, I call it my lakathon. It's latkes every night for Hanukkah, and it's just like different kinds. I grow a lot of parsnip, so I like parsnip, parsnip zucchini, parsnip potato, parsnip beet, winter squash, you know, celeriac, you know, anything can be shredded and put in a latke. And if I had potato latkes every night, it would get really boring, but I mix it up. But then I don't have to think about dinner for a week. You know, it's just latkes every night with a fruit sauce, which is like, you know, I get to celebrate all the different, you know, could be quince pear sauce or alpha sauce or Asian pear sauce, you know, whatever it is that I have. I've done persimmons on latkes too, or even persimmon latkes. I found a recipe for that. And then usually it's latkes and soup and fruit sauce.
When in 6 to 9 years, we can have some persimmon latkes.
You could have it sooner if you keep an eye out for who has persimmons that's not using it in your area. Because I certainly have persimmons every year, and the latkes would be made out of fuyu, where they're firm, and so you can shred it. But if you wanted a fruit sauce to go on the latkes, you probably want to use tortillas.
Or American.
Or American, indeed.
Woo. Wow.
So I can get more technical if there's like questions like that about safety and stuff, or
Your
we can go
pantry,
wherever.
your pantry must be huge.
I managed to get a farmhouse with a nice pantry. Yes, I'm just delighted that my place came with a pantry. Yeah,
Root cellar? You have a root
I
cellar?
don't have a root cellar. And I have a refrigerator, a Samsung refrigerator they have recalls on them. Don't ever buy a Samsung refrigerator.
Oh.
And it often is leaking water. It hasn't done that in a while, I noticed. So I'm looking to replace my refrigerator, but I'm realizing with all these apples and pears that I actually need 2 refrigerators. So if you know anyone getting a refrigerator, I'm looking for something like that. Someone just told me he has a cooler. I am wondering if anyone knows about like just storing pears in coolers. Because, you know, Joni Cooper from the Home Orchard Society in Portland. She used to scold me all the time about my pears. I'd bring my, you know, because I volunteered with the Home Orchard Society, and I'd bring my pears to share, and they never were ripened right? Because we want to pick our pears off the tree, and then they need to be ripened for 2 weeks in a refrigerator, but I didn't live with a refrigerator, so I couldn't do that. And now my refrigerator is already full of pears and I have a ton more pears and I have a friend who left a cooler at my house and he said I could just keep it. And so now I'm wondering how to best store the pears in the cooler since I don't have another refrigerator.
So the pears will ripen in the refrigerator, but not if left out.
Yeah, well, so, and I can, this is, you should remind me if I don't send you, like, remind me to send you these links. And so there's an article by someone, it's a website called Botanist in the Kitchen. And she has a great article about pears and explaining why pears ripen differently. And they have, the anatomy is called, they have lenticels, inside of them. And, so pears ripen from the inside out. And that's why if you get pears off the tree, they won't ripen right. They're often too mushy. You know, if you want a nice firm pear, it needs to be ripened in the refrigerator.
And botanist in the
Botanist in the Kitchen.
kitchen,
I think it's called The Art of Pear Ripening. Yeah, so which is another reason why I'm eager to get rid of these pears is because I want someone else to ripen them right. And I already have a refrigerator full of pears.
So are these are ready to go in the fridge, or these are already like?
Some might be ready to eat, but I haven't been able to bring my orchard ladder over to the pear tree yet, because it's still in the Gravenstein apple tree, and I've had a really busy week. My family was visiting on Monday last week, and then every other day was spent, filming for school. Cause I teach with Oregon State University, and I also had to do in 2 roosters, so it's been a big week, and I'm trying to keep up with the pears and the apples.
Wow.
Yeah,
Wow. Gosh, so much good information. I would earthquake your, earthquake your jars.
yeah, I need a little rail on the thing, but that's not gonna be hard, you know?
Or just a bungee cord.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, bungee cord, I mean, I work with Wild Time Farm, which does lumber, you know, and so they have all these like furring strips, you know, from just from putting the edging on.
Mhm.
And so it wouldn't be hard to get a
Cool.
little edger on there.
Neat.
Yeah.
Did you say what that one was?
Oh, we didn't do
You
this
forgot?
one. Yes, this is a good example. This is grape juice.
Ah,
And so,
Honestly, it looks like a blueberry something.
yeah, it's grape juice. Remind me, I got one more I've got a blueberry recipe I just made this year that was delicious. So this is grape juice. And I brought this because it's a great example of using the steam juicer. One of the coolest things about a steam juicer is that you don't have to can things that come out of the steam juicer because they're already boiling. And so when I make my grape juice, I do it with a steam juicer. You know what a steam juicer is?
Mhm.
And so I do it with a steam juicer and I have my jars in the oven, you know, just like for canning, and I have the pot of hot water to keep the lids in, to keep them supple. And then I take a hot jar out of the oven, I put it under the spout with the steam juicer, I fill it up, I take a lid, I put it on top, I put the ring on and put it on the towel to cool on the counter. So you miss that whole step, and that was really handy to learn that.
You don't need the 20-minute like boil.
You know, because it's boiling coming out, and that is really nice.
Mhm.
And so the steam juicer is really good for, I mean, I do it with this grape doesn't have seeds, but if you, like for Concord, it would be really good to use. Or something weird like gumi, which is hard to process because it has large seeds in it, or a hawthorn. You know, anything with large seeds, I'd start turning to, what can I do with the steam juicer?
Mhm. Wow.
Have you ever used it with like blackberries or anything like that?
I haven't,
Juicer, okay.
I don't have one, so I'd always
Okay.
have to borrow it, and
Mhm.
it's usually around like Rosh Hashanah when the grapes are ready, and so I spend like, I remember one year spending a whole day on Yom Kippur steam juicing, and it's like not eating, just steam
Whoa.
juicing all day, which is usually what I do anyway when I'm steam juicing, because it takes so much focus and it goes for so long that you can't really walk away when you're doing like a ton of grapes.
Mhm.
And I mean, I think I ended up with like 30 quarts of each variety
Wow.
and 20 pints or something. crazy.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm always running out of mason jars. But maybe not anymore, now that I can store a ton of them and people know that I'm a mason jar
Mhm.
hoarder.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Barb, do you have any questions?
No, I'm fine, I'm fine.
My head is just spinning with all these possibilities.
Yeah,
That's really neat.
Yeah, so tomorrow night is the official class on putting up the harvest, where I'll also talk about what to do this month in the garden, you know, where we talk about the winter garden and also putting up food. In cold storage too, you know, just like how do you cure your winter squashes and what do you do with your onions and stuff like that.
What class is this?
So I do the once a month, grow your own produce workshop series. And, so this is the September class, the theme is putting up the harvest.
So, and where do you teach this?
It's on Zoom.
Oh.
Mhm.
So can other people
Yeah,
join?
anyone can join. It's, $30.
And how would one get there?
You could go to permaculturerising.com. And it happens every month. In October, we're doing, garlic, cover crops and compost. And then November's theme is nourishing soups, wildlife in the garden, and planning for the coming year. And I'll start it up again in February 2025. It'll be the 13th year of the series. And, I'll open registration in November, and it sounds like, I'm in discussion with the Olympia Library, the Lacey Library. It sounds like they might pick up the workshop series, and so anyone who has a library card in Thurston County will be able to take it for free.
Oh, wow. Yeah,
So that would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
But I have students, I have students in Montana in this class, and this year's pretty small. Workshop registration has been difficult for most everyone I know who's doing workshops. This year I have 36 people that signed up for the full series, and you can also sign up for a 5-class package or individually. Last year I had 90 people, and the year before I had 90 people, so.
And what time is your?
It's from 6 to 8.
6 to 8.
And it's on Zoom, and if you can't come, but you want the content, it's recorded. After the workshop, everyone gets the recording of the presentation, which is indexed. And, you get the PDF of the slides, and there's also 6 to 12 handouts each one. And, so if we're doing announcements, my other things that are going on is, next Wednesday, I'm speaking at Small Farm School in, Clackamas Community College. And I'll be talking about a permaculture approach to pest and disease management through, holistic nutrition. Or through nutrient management, I think is my title. And then on, Saturday, October 19th, I'm doing a hands-on workshop at my farm on food forests. And so I have young fruit trees, like yearlings that have just gone in, and then I have a mature orchard that we can learn from. So that's gonna be really fun, and we've been talking about collaborating on, my organization Fertile Ground is gonna do a fall picnic and work party on Sunday, September 29th. You are all invited, and I had talked to Deb about having a fruit club picnic out at my place, and so now we're thinking about bringing them all together. Yeah. And my place is, called Permaculture Rising, and it's on 113th in between Case Road and Little Rock. And I have a small nursery there. I have fall vegetable starts available right now. And, so that's the broccoli overwintering and fall broccolis, cauliflowers, kales, cabbages, lettuces, stuff like that. As well as perennials, berries, medicinal herbs, perennial vegetables, stuff like that, really good stuff for companions under orchards. And my nursery is generally open on weekends from 11 to 3.
And all this information is on Permaculture Rising, right?
Workshops is on Permaculture Rising. The best place to find updated nursery information is on either Permaculture Rising on Instagram or Permaculture Rising on Facebook, or Marisha's Permaculture Plant Nursery on Facebook.
Sorry,
Keeping you busy.
Marisha's Permaculture.
Plant Nursery. That was the old name for my nursery before it became a real thing. I mean, it was a real thing then too.
And
It
that's
was
on, that's
selling
on,
more plants in Portland than it is in Olympia, so hopefully that'll change.
yeah, that's on Facebook.
Yeah, Marisha's Permaculture Plant Nursery is on Facebook.
Okay.
And I try to announce on Thursday prior to the weekend what the nursery hours are for the weekend, but usually it's 11 to 3. Maybe it won't be, it will be this weekend, but maybe not next weekend because of the cider visit. That's another event. I should tell Barbara.
Oh, yeah, Randy, would you like
Yeah,
to?
so I'm still confirming the time.
Yeah,
and
I did, yeah, I heard about it, yeah.
That happens, yeah, so. That's
Yeah,
at the Three Dog Cider Brewery, so if it's not that weekend, I think like. The guy said he's very interested in doing it, it's just, making sure that that weekend still, like that'll work,
okay. Um.
And if I find a cider press by September 29th, we will be pressing cider. So these people came by and they collect cider presses. They came by in the spring. I didn't get their phone number. And so that's disappointing. And I did find someone right now in Longview, I think, who has a cider press for $250, but it only has one basket. And he built it, but it's an electric press and it looks, it looks really nice. So I'm waiting to see if he'll trade for plants, but if he doesn't, maybe someone will help fund me. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Wow, so much going on. Wow, this is great.
Yeah, some people spend their time shopping for groceries. I spend my time putting up the groceries.
Yeah,
Mhm.
growing them and then putting them up. Yeah,
Yeah, or
Wow.
foraging them, finding them somewhere.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
This is really
Thanks for
quite
the
interesting.
opportunity.
Yeah. We'll record this and put it up on our YouTube space.
And I think it sure would be fun, if we were able to grow the membership to have like tastings and stuff like this.
I do
Mhm.
too.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, and I will, and we could advertise the September event as a tasting for whoever wants to bring what they, what fruit they have, and we could put out a table.
Okay.
Similar to the way they do it at Peninsula Fruit Club, but, more low key. Just us.
Yeah,
And thanks for
Yeah.
finding the date of the Peninsula Fruit Club.
yeah. Well, I had to go to their Facebook. It's not on their website.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I was looking around and you found it,
Is
so
it like the first or second weekend of October? or
26th.
something?
it's all the way at the end.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is there gonna be any, like, well, I was thinking ripe apples, I mean, other than storage apples at the.
Ah,
Yeah, I wonder why they're doing it so late.
no.
Yeah.
Well, anything else for the good of the order here?
What a great time to be growing fruit.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Thank you for sharing your knowledge with us. You're quite a treasure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Well, maybe we'll, stop the meeting here and, but, yeah, again, thank you. And thanks for being here. Everybody in the room, thanks for
Yeah.
being here. The crowd. Barb, thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you. It was great. See ya.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming.
yeah, you take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.